Oh, thank you, yeah. It's Colin here again. I'm sorry to be bloody dropping on you yet again, but I want to, on my third video here, I want to continue to talk about the Olympics. I've put two videos on, and if you haven't seen them, I want you to see them and get in touch with the New Zealand Olympics Committee. I hope to put this on the video before I go. Now, I don't really know where to start. There's a way how New Zealand athletes can run faster, and I'll need to explain it. Now, I don't really quite know where to start. See, I want to make New Zealand the greatest nation this world has ever known, and it can be the case, actually. But it takes a bit of explaining, and it'll take work to do. It's not something that'll just come out of the blue sort of thing. Now, let's have a look at a couple of things, see if we can salvage something here now in my time that I've got here. We're looking, let's say, now at there was a party guy. He liked going to parties and he liked drinking wine, and it was about 2,000 years ago actually, and this guy was this party goer. He liked going to parties, and so much so that the Pharisees in those days told him that he's a wine blibbler. Is going to parties. Must have been going to parties enough times for them to call him a wine blibbler. And so anyway, this particular incident is well known by people Christian people, but there's something that they probably miss in it, actually. What they miss is this. Well, first of all, let's have a look what happened now. This party guy, name was Jesus Christ, actually. That was his name. He was the Son of God, and he did great miracles down here while he was here, and he apparently came to knock evil out completely by his death. But that's another story. So we'll have a look at him now, and we see that he did great miracles. But this particular party that he went to, being a party guy, he actually ran out of wine, you see, at this meeting, at this party. Now, what he did, he got a guy to fill up a casket with water. Now, this is well known what's going to happen, but something else that people are not quite aware of, perhaps, is that so the guy did it probably, and he knowing that he was a miracle worker, or he didn't know what was going to happen, but with being the man that he was, they did what he said, and then when it was with water, he told this guy, to take it to the governor of the feast. So probably being, as I say, the kind of guy he was, he did that. And the governor of the feast, he tasted it and said, he said to me, you've left the best wine until now. But usually they drink the best wine for a start, and then leave the more inferior wine to the last. But you have left the best wine until now. But the thing that a lot of people miss in this particular incident was the fact that there was no change in that feast at all. So therefore, this wine must have been better than the original wine. But they can actually now, even years ago, they can actually make food or have food in a compost or better than maiden soil. They can actually operate soil now better than maiden soil. They've been able to do that for some years. So therefore, this particular grapes, where the grapes were growing in those days, they might have been able to grow on better compost, a better land, being up to organic status. Like in the United States, there they had cows feeding on organic pasture. And so in experiments, they tried to give them Bang's disease and other diseases, just in experiments. But none of those cows took it, got sick or got these diseases because they were feeding on organic pasture. So that's incidentally what New Zealand needs too, is to have their soil up to the pasture growth up to organic standards, whereby they can give animals testing to try and give them diseases, and if they can't, they won't take them. Well, therefore, the soil's very good. So anyway, getting back to this this incident, we see that what was going on was what Jesus did was better. The wine was better than the original wine. So let's take now, let's take now kissing and fucking and fastest tongue in the West and hugging and feeling up and the unlovely as well, like Princess Diana, was it? She would put her arm around an African boy who say if she knew by chance that he had he was HIV positive, say, and had AIDS as well, she'd put her arm around her. And I think it's Prince Harry. I never checked this out first before this video. I think it was Prince Harry's taken over the love that he got from her, and he's a loving kind of guy too. But you could check those out. But anyway, the question is that where did all this love come from? Well, it actually came from the Holy Spirit. He was the author of all love, whatever it may be, and he can actually do the same as what Jesus did. He can actually make kissing even sweeter than it is at the moment. In so much that a girl could be in Romance Street, that's to be previously known as, if things go, it be previously known as Courtenay Place. But at the moment, it is still Courtenay Place, but I'll need to explain that more. But just supposing that she was being kissed by this love, and the kissing was sweeter than the original, then she could not want to get up again from Romance Street ever again, because the kissing is so incredibly sweet. And he can make fucking in that sweeter too. And he can make it for longer. Men can keep on going. Women can climax after climax. And he can do all these wonderful, because he's the author of all love. And he can make it better than the original, see, and if he wants to. But it's going to take, it's not going to just come down overnight like that. And now, I thought too, how much time I've got here. I'd be lucky if they give me half an hour. I'm keeping an eye on the time here. Let's have a look at the Holy Spirit. What he's actually a person. He's the third person of the Godhead. For example, I'll give you an example of what he's like, what he can do in that. He's been working around in the world, today too particularly. Rees Howells was an intercessor. I've got his photograph here. I don't know if you can actually see it. There. You might be able to just catch him there. He was an intercessor, and he was ever since Hitler walked into the Rhine in 1936, breaking the Locarno Treaty. Rees Howells and a few other intercessors were keeping an eye on him and praying through about Hitler. Well, there was a number of things that happened, but the one particular one that I wanted to mention to you was Moscow. Hitler did an amazing thing. At 4 o'clock in the morning, I think it was on the 23rd of July or something in 1941. I just have a look at the. I've got it right here, but anyway, it was 4 o'clock in the morning. Anyway, he invaded Russia, and the secular papers, at least one said, "Whom the gods destroy, they first sin mad." He quoted an old proverb. And what actually happened was Hitler was actually getting about 20 miles a day into Russia. Now, what happened was the Russian forces were actually disintegrated. They weren't. What shall I say? They weren't together. They were separated. They weren't expecting this to happen, and also they'd signed a pact with Hitler, and but foolishly they were relying on that pact. Their forces were unorganised, but when they did get organised, it didn't make all that much difference, because the hordes of Germans, it must have been at least about 4 million from what happened later on, came through, and their firepower was just tanks or whatever was too much for the Russians, and they just slowly but surely disintegrating under the power of Hitler. So anyway, Rees Howells, as I say, he was an intercessor, and but he was an idiot, really. He was a sort of a yes and no situation with Rees Howells. He was a dud, really, in a way. He was, but he was sort of yes and no with Rees Howells. He was sort of, he didn't put things right. But as I say, it was more or less a yes and no situation. So anyway, he went to the 7 o'clock news to hear if Moscow had fallen or not. It was imminent that Moscow was going to fall. And so the news on the radio said that Moscow hadn't fallen, but bad news was expected any time. And a few minutes later, as he was walking away, see, the Holy Spirit is a person, the third person of the Godhead, and he can speak. And he's an actual person. So Rees Howells, instead of interceding about Moscow, sorting the thing out, and just the Holy Spirit stepped in this time and said to Rees Howells, "Is there any need for Moscow to fall? Why don't you pray to me that I'll save the city and give these Nazis a setback?" So because that Rees Howells was a dud, but a yes and no situation with him, what happened was he sort of thought it was a ridiculous sort of thing. I mean, it's imminent that Moscow is going to fall. What does he mean, sort of thing? But I mean, he should have accepted it. It was like a woman. She was in charge of the bell for the coal miners down below, and God spoke to her once and said, "Ring the bell." So being another idiot woman, she said, "What do you want me to ring the bell for, you stupid idiot?" But But God didn't answer her, but spoke a second time and said, ring the bell. And again she came out with this carry on. Another idiot woman, stupid bitch. She said the same thing. What do you want me to ring the bell for? So God didn't answer that and spoke a third time, ring the bell. And so this time she did ring the bell. Now, if by chance you rang that bell for no reason, they'll really give you arseholes. I'll tell you much that that's what they said. If you'd have rang that bell for no reasons, my golly, they will. I'll give you arseholes. So anyway, the men came scurrying out, and a bit later it was either I was reading about it in an article or somewhere, in a magazine or so. They give you these accounts of what goes on around the world. And so what she did was they had either started to give her arseholes, or they were just either started to give her arseholes or were about to give her arseholes about this ringing this bell like this. Well, anyway, just as they'd either started to give her arseholes or were going to, suddenly, without warning, the ground shook like fury. It was a huge earthquake. And later on, when they went down to when those men were, they found the place to be devastated. And two of those miners actually became Christians, actually, as a result of that. Not surprising. It's not surprising they all didn't, actually, but due to the problems of Christianity, which I need to explain about in other videos, the others didn't. But it was just interesting, anyway, that their lives were saved, and but by that. But anyway, getting back then to Moscow, instead of Rees Howell sort of trying to sort this problem out before, I mean, he should have been on to Moscow. But anyway, so the Holy Spirit said what he said. He said, is there any need for Moscow to fall? Why don't you pray and why don't you pray to me that I'll save the city and give these Nazis a setback? So when they settled down, they started to pray, and they got to the stage where they began to believe that Hitler would be, Germans would be overthrown in a Russian winter. Now, I don't know if you know the Russian winters, but they're really killers. And so Rees Howell said at one stage, he said, "Thus saith the Lord," sort of thing. Well, the Holy Spirit actually he was working with. He said, Hitler is caught up to mean in the Russian winter. Now, Hitler, the Germans could have taken Moscow there at one stage, but they could have walked into Moscow, but they didn't for some reason. Well, anyway, this tremendous winter, this early winter, I said an early winter came. The Holy Spirit must have brought an early winter. And an incredible thing happened, in so much that 3 million of the crack German army froze to death in an early Russian winter. 3 million. That's an enormous amount of troops to lose, So that's why I reckon they must have put over 4 million when they first went into Russia, because they lost 3 million, because later on they went to take Stalingrad, and that was another interesting story too, how they were pushed out of Stalingrad. Normally they shouldn't have been, but that's another thing of the Holy Spirit move too. But I haven't got time to go into that. We just want to sort of stick on Moscow at the moment. So there, how the Holy Spirit came, but it was just unfortunate that Rees Howell happened to be a judgmental kind of a guy as well, and he wanted communism to be judged, and he was quite happy for that. And so if you go with judgment, well, then the Holy Spirit will go for judgment. He won't be judging on me. He's told me a few things about what he used to do, what he wants done, but there's no judgment with me, because he knows that I'm not into judgment, and so that's it. So so that's what's one thing about the Holy Spirit. Well, perhaps I can mention D-Day too. If I've got time here, or it's getting on, or must go. I could just mention this last one about D-Day. The Holy Spirit spoke to his sounds and said, I'm going over, and there won't be a setback. It was the only night the U-boats didn't patrol the channel. The Holy Spirit stopped them from patrolling the channel, because he can do what he wants to do. And so there were the Allies with 11,000 planes, 4,000 ships, 5 million men for D-Day. And when they landed at Normandy, they didn't strike one plane or one ship of the Germans. The Holy Spirit said, I'm going over, and there won't be a setback. But you really need to read Rhys Howell's Intercessor, really. It's a great book, and he brings out these sort of things. But I think the book's out of print now. It's called Rhys Howell's Intercessor by Norman Grubb, Grubb. But anyway, I sort of want to stress, yes, about the Holy Spirit. We're sort of getting back to the Olympics. Now, perhaps I could just mention another thing. There's no time here. New Zealand. In the Second World War, there was, at one stage, the Japanese, at this stage, well, actually, Rhys Howells wasn't involved at all with the Japanese. It was all on Hitler, actually. But the Japanese were going to start bombing New Zealand. Now, this probably would have been done by a carrier or carriers. It depends on how many sorties they were going to start bombing New Zealand on. Yes, but anyway, that's what happened was the Christians took the old town hall in Wellington. That's still up. They're working on it at the moment, actually. I think it was damaged by the earthquake a couple of years ago, and some of the roads blocked off around at the moment, but it's still up, the old town hall. And the Christians gathered and they prayed that Japanese won't come to New Zealand. In my hometown, Wairoa, they got at least, they had a little town between Napier and Gisborne on the coast, a little town called Wairoa. And even there they had 2 concrete bunkers, at least 2, maybe 3, built there in case the Germans, the Japs rather come on the sea, because Wairoa was right by the sea, and so they had these 2 or 3 concrete bunkers ready for the Japanese to come. So anyway, what actually happened was that the Christians took the old town hall, and they prayed that it wouldn't happen. They wouldn't come. So bad weather stopped the Japanese from bombing New Zealand. Now, some atheists in that could say, and I agree too, that bad weather can come as good weather. I agree with the atheists there, and or anybody, that bad weather can come just as easy as good weather. But what happened when the weather cleared up? The Japanese still didn't come and bomb New Zealand. Why? Because a divine intervention protected New Zealand. New Zealand's an ally. The Holy Spirit is with the Allies. He's not with evil. He's with the Allies. He's with countries like New Zealand. The Allies he's with, not evil people. So if by chance the Japs had have started bombing Wellington, Lambton Quay might have been badly hit. Willis Street and Courtney Place might have been heavily bombed. It depends how many sorties they sent over and how much bombing they did, but they might have bombed Lambton Quay to the ground and Willis Street and Courtney Place. But but I'm just sort of mentioning about the Holy Spirit. Or in this case, it was God that was actually protected, but we're looking at divine intervention here. Now, so we're sort of looking at the Olympics here. Now, the Holy Spirit can help the Olympics. Now, just if I got time, I don't know what time I started. I've got 5 more minutes maybe. If they'll give me half an hour, I don't know if they'll give me that long. Cali is the third biggest city in Colombia, and the drug traffic there was just terrible. The dope, it was absolutely terrible. It infiltrated everywhere into Cali. Doctors, lawyers, everything, you name it, it infiltrated everywhere. People were frightened to buggery in Cali. They absolutely lived in fear. This was several years ago. This was on Transformations 1 or 2. There's maybe three videos on this. So anyway, finally in the finish, the Christians took a stadium there for an all-night prayer meeting on a Friday night. And that weekend, a miracle happened. It was utterly impossible, more than impossible to happen, is that not one murder came in that next weekend in Cali. And that was utterly impossible for Cali to have no murders in the weekend. That was utterly impossible, more than impossible sort of thing that to happen. Now, I think of my times, I'm not sure what time I started. I better close. I could put another video on because I'm not sure how much time they'll give me on this video. It'll be lucky if I get half an hour. I'm not sure what time I started. It might have been 1:45, and I've only got 5 minutes, so I won't have much more time. But if New Zealand could take stadiums for whatever we want to do, as long as we're specific in what we want, like Yonggi Cho, he wanted a chair, desk, and a bicycle. He was in his early days in Seoul. He's got the biggest church in the world, actually. He had about 600,000 people. I don't know what it's like now, but he did have the biggest church in the world. So one day he came home and he said he had it out with God about this problem of this chair, desk, and bicycle. He said, look, how can I do your work unless I have these things? So he felt God was going to speak to him, and so either then or another time God spoke to him and said, what are you doing, you sick cunt, praying to me like this? Don't you know there's dozens of different kind of chairs and desks and bottles of bloody around, you sick cunt? Why you haven't told me what kind of chair, desk, and bicycle you wanted, you sick cunt? So therefore he got specific about it, and he decided that he'd get a bike from the US. Thought they were stronger bikes than the Korean ones. So he got that. He got virtually a new one, just slightly used, and then he got something made of mahogany. It might have been the desk one, and he wanted a chair, one of these roller chairs that rolled around the office, and he got one of those, and it was at least those three things. So he got them. He's got to be specific. And Suzette Hatting was the same problem too. She wanted shoes. She was an intercessor. She came to New Zealand and she wanted shoes. And about 6 months later, she had no shoes. And so she had it out with God one day, and she gave probably a deep sigh and says, "My shoes, where are my shoes?" So God spoke to her and said, "What are you coming bloody around me for like this, you sick bitch? Don't you know there's all sorts of women's shoes are bloody about, you sick bitch? You didn't ask me what kind of shoes you wanted, you sick bitch." And so I think she probably got specific, and she got the shoes that she wanted. Now this is as far as I can go at the moment. We're looking at my time here. I'll be lucky if they get this on, actually. So I'll have to just catch up with you on another video. They can't give. I mean, I'm lucky to get this far. So I'll just progress with another video, and but I'm still on the Olympics. This is my 4th video now, so if you haven't seen my videos, look at Colin Martin, on the Olympics, and it should come up. Well, I must close. My time's up here by the looks. So I need to say a lot more about how we can get these New Zealand athletes to go fast and smash the whole minute off the world swimming records. And one comes in, snaps up the diamond and that. But I need to explain. I've explained all that before on my other videos, so I must close. So I'll catch up with you on another video. So in the meantime,